Hello and welcome to Red Cornwall. I'm Jane Holland, and this is a new socialist podcast coming to you from the north of the duchy. In the first part of this podcast, you will hear Steve Haynes and Graham Smith discussing the resolution to be put before the Labour Party later this year for the creation of a Cornwall Labour Party and what that means for Cornish people. Plus, of course, the unavoidable topic of the day, Brexit, and how that might impact the duchy. In the second half of the podcast, we went out and about, broadcasting just over the border in Devon from Pounds House Park in Plymouth during a Labour canvassing campaign that we were supporting for Sarah Allen, Labour candidate for Plymouth City Council for the Peveril ward. I spoke to Sarah Allen about her campaign and also asked Plymouth MP Luke Pollard for his advice on winning elections for Labour in Cornwall. Jeremy Corbyn, leader of the Labour Party, was also there on the campaign trail in Plymouth, supporting Sarah Allen, and we not only have an extract from his speech about Labour's plans for investment in the South West, but a quick interview with him in the midst of an excitable crowd. Before that, though, we have Steve Haynes and Graham Smith setting the world to rights over a cup of tea in rural Cornwall.
Hi, I'm Steve Haynes. I think I've been a socialist just about all my life. I don't originally come from Cornwall. I come from a place in the Midlands called Walsall, but I've lived in Cornwall for over 10 years now. I'm also vice chair of North Cornwall CLP, that's Constituency Labour Party, for those of you who don't follow all those initials. And I'm also chair of Bude Labour Party. And I'm talking today with Graham Smith. Graham, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, my name's Graham Smith and I've lived in St Mabin, which is a village in North Cornwall, for nearly 40 years. I don't know if I would describe myself as having been a socialist the whole of my life, but probably from about 14 or 15, which is when I knew that I had a massive chip on my shoulder and it's just got steadily worse, really. I'm the chair of the North Cornwall Constituency Party, the chair of the Wadebridge Branch Labour Party, and I'm a delegate to the Cornwall Labour Party.
Now, the Cornwall Labour Party is something I really want to talk to you about because lots of people tell me that you are one of the main movers behind the concept of a distinct Cornwall Labour Party.
I think we should qualify the phrase main mover because we are, of course, an extremely egalitarian and non-hierarchical organisation. So I'm one of many movers behind the idea of a Cornwall Labour Party. But the North Cornwall Constituency Party has a motion, a resolution, an initiative in front of the National Labour Party at the moment, which will be coming back to the annual National Labour Party conference in September. This year it's in Brighton, to create, within the rules of the Labour Party, a Cornwall Labour Party similar to the Scottish Labour Party and the Welsh Labour Party. And in a nutshell, it's all about money and power.
What would be the advantage to us? I mean, if I'm in North Cornwall CLP, Constituency Labour Party, I serve a very large area. What would be the particular advantage to us being members of a Cornwall Labour Party?
A lot of the money that we all pay in our subscriptions to our annual membership of the Labour Party goes to the National Labour Party headquarters. And I think probably most people who are in work, their annual membership fees around about 50 quid. We've got about 8,000 Labour Party members in Cornwall. That's £400,000 a year raised for the Labour Party just from memberships in Cornwall. Never mind all the jumble sales, never mind all the raffles or all the other fundraising things that political organisations do. We should be fabulously wealthy. We should be able to employ full-time organising staff, particularly as we now have two key target seats, Camborne and Redruth and Hale, and Truro and Falmouth constituencies, where to be honest, even without full-time organising staff, I'm confident that Labour's going to win those constituencies in the next general election. But across the whole of Cornwall, we actually have the resources to fund an extremely sophisticated political organisation. That is what you would get as a member of the Labour Party in North Cornwall.
Okay, so what would Cornish people who live in Cornwall, what would be the advantage for them?
More Labour representation at all levels of government. So more Labour members of Parliament, as I said, those two constituencies. But we're actually in second place in the St Austell and Newquay constituency and in the South East Cornwall constituency. And although we might not get over the line there at the next general election, we are the main challengers. And so if you want to get rid of the Conservatives and see more Labour MPs, then that's where we need to get stuck in, get involved, do more campaigning, more canvassing, more recruiting of members, knocking on doors, distributing leaflets, putting up posters, all the things that take money and organisation. But crucially, at a local government level, not just town and parish, but mainly Cornwall Council, which is being reorganised at the next set of elections. And instead of having 123 councillors at County Hall in Truro, there will be only 87.
Right.
Now, that means that those individual councillors will have to work much harder than the current bunch, about 30% harder, but they will have more power individually, as it were. So, and I think it's going to make Cornwall Council a much sharper party political organisation. The independent group of councillors, once upon a time, the council was completely controlled by independents. Over time, those independents, most of them, started to stand in their true political colours, which was as Conservatives. The Conservatives were the first party to lead the new look Cornwall Council back in 2009. And I think what we are going to see is the independents squeezed to almost vanishing point. I think the Conservatives will do very well in the new regime, which is one of the reasons why they promoted it very heavily. And the crucial test is who is going to be the main opposition to the Conservatives. And sadly, because I actually do have quite a few friends who are Liberal Democrats, but I have to say that the Liberal Democrats have not been an effective opposition to Conservative policies. Well, as we know, in 2010, they went into coalition with the Conservatives and formed the government. And both emotionally and economically, I think they are actually quite close to what I would describe as right-of-centre political ideas. They're in favour of free markets and local communities doing things for themselves. So instead of proper organisation and proper funding for services, well, if you want the grass cut, you go and cut it. If you want your beaches cleaned, you go and clean your beaches. If you want a library service, well, I'm afraid you're just going to have to volunteer because we're not paying for proper librarians anymore. And before long, hospitals and schools are going to be organised on the same basis, unless we get a Labour government and a Labour council.
What political challenges do we face, do you think, in Cornwall?
Well, they're huge.
Yes.
Absolutely huge.
Where do you want to start? Apart from completely changing sorts of things.
Somebody said to me the other day that Cornwall is the Florida, if you like, of Europe, almost. I mean, we're stuck out in the middle of an ocean, a long way from the centres of power, a magnet for people who want to come and retire. They are no longer economically active. That's one of the reasons for the huge Brexit vote, if you like, in Cornwall, is, we know that you've built a university and you spent a lot of money on the airport, and we see industrial estates paid for by European money up and down the A30. We don't care. We're retired. We don't like foreigners, and to be honest, we're still fighting World War II.
We often talk about how isolated and alone we feel. There's just a few of us here, and it's growing, but it's a big group. But lots of people in a room together talking about these things, there's a real sense of togetherness there.
There is, and that's very valuable in its own right, but I think even more so is this sense that, do you know what? the Labour Party is serious. They're actually talking about running things.
Yeah.
Somebody came to one of our meetings the other day and said, well, if you agree with what we're saying about this, you could always write a letter to Cornwall Council. And I couldn't resist the temptation to say, we're not going to write a letter to Cornwall Council, we're going to take it over. The Labour Party is about winning power.
Yeah.
I'm deeply pragmatic in the way that I'm approaching this. But at the same time, I feel like you could call them left-wing if you like, but the ideals I had when I joined the party haven't changed.
Yeah.
Maybe they should have. I mean, one issue which has changed for me personally is in 1975 I voted against being in the common market. I'm now a passionate Remainer because it's not the common market anymore, it's the European Union, and it's changed, and in that respect I've changed as well. And I think that we've seen Cornwall change. I'm sorry to move the subject onto Europe, but it's clearly going to be topical over the next week or so. In Cornwall, almost every farmer that I came across in 2016 was for leaving the European Union. Now, every farmer that I come across, and living where I do, I come across plenty, they are absolutely terrified of leaving, and they are desperate to remain. Even the fishing communities have suddenly realised, who's going to buy our fish? It's all very well saying Cornish fish for Cornish fishermen, but if we can't sell those fish, we're going to have to eat them all ourselves, and we don't eat enough fish. And so the fishing industry dies as a result. Instead, leaving the European Union was supposed to be the salvation. Instead, it's going to be the final nail in the coffin. Leaving the European Union was supposed to liberate Cornwall's farmers so that they could flex their muscles better on the international stage. Well, do you know what? That international stage stops at Dover. So, we've got daffodil bulbs rotting in the fields because we can't get enough migrant labour into Cornwall to pick daffodils.
Yes, there is that argument, but the problem here is there's two of us in this room, and as you know, I take a different view from you.
Yes.
So I get to put my penny's worth in. I was canvassing in Plymouth at the weekend. And just as you said about the farmers being afraid, we were knocking on the door of people that we knew are Labour supporters, and the vast majority of people saying, yes, fantastic, lovely to see you, and so forth. But there was some that would open the door who would say things like, I've been a Labour voter all my life, but I'm not going to vote at all because my vote is worthless, because I'm looking at the television, I'm seeing politicians playing games, and now it looks like that they're going to not respect the referendum. And as you know, I voted Remain at that referendum, but I lost. And I don't disagree with any of the points that you made, that it's not there's going to be some pretty tough times for us ahead. But I take the view that we have to respect the referendum, because otherwise, as you know, I come from the Midlands, I fear that we will lose the trust of people, particularly in the Midlands, where there are many Labour seats that are on a knife edge, and they could turn against us. And I also worry about, if we lose the trust of Labour voters on something like this, particularly working class Labour voters, who might they turn to? And that's a whole other conversation for another time that I wouldn't want to go into. That having been said, I want the best Brexit possible, so I think customs union, workers' rights, obviously a huge thing. I'd much rather a Labour government being in place if we had left the European Union than a right-wing Tory government that could potentially play absolute havoc with our work.
Well, I think you've answered your own dilemma there.
Yeah.
Okay, you want to respect the referendum result, but actually you're quite nuanced about what it was. You want to leave with the best possible deal.
Yeah.
Well, what is the best possible deal? Probably, yes, customs union. Probably you and I would agree, freedom of movement. I love being able to just hop on a plane and go wherever I like. And I'm not at all concerned about migrant labour coming to work here. We need migrant workers to come and work in Cornwall.
But there's a difference between you and me. I've never been on a plane in my life. I'm scared of flying. And therefore I'm not a great traveller. I do believe there are all sorts of reasons why people voted Leave, and I think there was a strong working class vote of people who were convinced that they had not benefited at all from
absolutely. I think in Cornwall, all the polling evidence suggests that the constituency that voted most strongly in favour of Leave was St Austell and Newquay. Now, that's the constituency that's got the Eden project near St Austell, which has had squillions off Europe, and Newquay Airport, which has also had squillions off Europe. And yet the people who live there say they don't feel the benefit of that. Well, and indeed those working class people, maybe from the China clay villages, who don't spend their weekends going and looking at all the exotic plants at Eden, and who don't go to Newquay Airport for a quick holiday in Alicante. Absolutely, because they don't see how Europe benefited them. And they're not wrong. I'm not saying that every penny of the hundreds of millions of pounds that Cornwall has received from Europe was wisely spent.
No.
And certainly we don't do a very good job at explaining how Europe impacts on our lives through things like, improved bathing water regulations and workers' rights. But come back to your, the nip of your point, really. Brexit means Brexit, she said. What does that mean? You want to leave with a deal, but what does that? What deal?
Yeah.
I mean, what's the difference between leaving customs union, single market? What's Norway? I mean, if leaving the European Union means that we can be like Norway, with one of the most socially progressive, liberally progressive, most democratic, best performing economies, highly educated societies on the planet, I'm all for it. I'm not wedded to the European Union simply as an abstract, theoretical, federalist construct for its own sake. But neither am I actually opposed to it for any of those reasons either. I'm in favour of what works, and economically and socially, what works best is staying in. So let's get on to what about the democracy? My vote doesn't count for anything. What are the options? A general election or another referendum, both of which require voting. I don't think it can ever be undemocratic to offer people another vote. So saying Brexit means Brexit, meaning the hardest possible no-deal Brexit, devil take the hindmost, where's the democracy in that? That's a Brexit defined by one person. So I think we're heading hopefully for a general election, in which case I would hope that Labour simply has a policy on Brexit, which is, I would argue that it should be to remain. That's what would go in the manifesto, and that people will vote for the manifesto, and Brexit is simply one issue. What depresses me most about the whole European debate over the last 2 years is that it's squeezed out every breath of air from everything else.
Yes.
Health, housing, education, poverty, stuff that I really want to talk about. Now, Europe is part of all of that, but we've just been obsessing with Brexit and indeed what it means for the extreme right wing of the Conservative Party. It's undemocratic to ask people the same question twice until they come back with a different answer. But if the question is different, that's not undemocratic.
I still remain to be convinced of that. I do think it would be a mistake for the Labour Party to go into a general election suddenly saying we are now in favour of Remain or in favour of etc, etc. I think that would be a mistake for all sorts of reasons, but I don't want to go into that. What I think is important for the Labour Party is that we still can have this conversation and people can support the Labour Party in the knowledge that there are people within the Labour Party and socialists across the board who can disagree on this issue but still work together for all those important issues that you just mentioned that are life and death and changing the way our country works and so forth.
I mean, the only people that I think I profoundly disagree with are those who look at the European Union as an end in itself. It's not, it's a means to an end. It's a vehicle for social change. It's not, let's just create it because we like blue and yellow things. It's and we're going to every.
It was an alternative to the Eurovision Song Contest, really, wasn't it?
I can remember when I was a kid, some people were learning a language called Esperanto.
Oh my lord, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that will unite us all. Yes. Yeah.
I mean, we'd stand a better chance teaching them Klingon.
Yes. Yes, you would.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, and I think we will leave at that point in time. And thank you so much for this conversation, Graham. And I bet we will have many more of them.
As you know, you've sat through plenty of Labour Party meetings with me, Steve, and I'm always happy to carry on talking.
Thank you, Graham.
I'm the Labour Party candidate for Plymouth in the upcoming local elections. My background is as an education campaigner. I don't think it's fair that Plymouth's children receive £300 less in funding than the national average. The campaign locally is to transform Pounds House in Central Park, which is a disused Edwardian manor house. We want to open it up to the community, bring the community together, break down the loneliness and isolation that pensioners can face, or those with disabilities who, face trouble accessing normal social events.
So how do you feel about Jeremy Corbyn visiting today?
I'm absolutely amazed. It's been an absolute honour. Of all the places he could have he chose Peveril and Plymouth.
It's wonderful, and I hope we're going to have great fun out on the canvassing.
Oh, I'm sure we will. I've been absolutely overwhelmed by the amount of people that have decided to join in the canvass.
Yeah, go Labour.
Definitely.
Well, good luck.
Thank you.
My name is Ruby Nation. I'm a part of the EC for Moorview, which is adjacent to this. Very, very glad to come down and help Sarah. She's absolutely excellent candidate, absolutely committed and hardworking. She's really going to make changes in the place, so very happy to come down and support her.
Brilliant. My name's Tess Blight. I'm the chair of the Plymouth Moorview constituency, which is the north of the city. And again, we have very fond memories of Pounds Park and Pounds House when it was open, and it's a really good campaign that the Labour councillors have taken on to get this reopened for the residents and the people of the city.
While on the campaign trail east of the border, we caught up with Luke Pollard, who's the Plymouth MP for Sutton and Devonport. He gave us some great advice on campaigning for Labour in Cornwall.
So we've got 2 target seats in Cornwall. We need to win those 2 target seats. And there is a temptation, because of the huge increase in membership, to campaign everywhere. But first of all, we've got to win our marginals. So that's Camberwell and Redrude, our fantastic candidate Paul there, and we've got to win Truro and Falmouth as well. And the thing is about those is we'll win them when we bang on doors, when we listen to voters, when we propose the policies that really matter, and we're not going to be able to do that unless we get activists in there. So we need the people that live in those constituencies to be active, to do something. That might be banging on a door, that might be putting up a poster, might be getting a postal vote, donating a couple of pounds to the party to go and do that. But we need those other people from Cornwall, from St Ives, from St Austell and Newquay, from South East Cornwall, from North Cornwall, those seats that we might not necessarily be winning next time round. I want us to win everywhere, but to get Jeremy into government, to get our manifesto implemented, we've got to win the marginal seats. They're tough enough as it is. So let's make sure we focus the efforts on it. Now look, I'm the only Labour MP for miles around, okay? I want to get people coming in and campaign for my re-election whenever the general election's called. But I want them to also campaign for Charlotte Holloway in Plymouth Moorview, another target seat. Now, as a Janner in Westminster, I make the case that the West Country is just as important as any other part of the country, especially important in terms of funding. But for the Labour Party, we can win 3 target seats just in Devon and Cornwall. And once we've won them, then we can push on to St Austell and Newquay and the other seats that we'll need to take to really cement that. It's a tough message, but I want to be absolutely honest with Labour activists. If we don't win our marginal seats, we don't get into government. Our focus has to be about supporting the marginal campaign. So my advice is campaign everywhere. Build capacity, learn the skills, know how doorstepping works, build your membership, fundraise. But when the time comes, when it comes to election times, be they local or national, national, and we're putting the resource into our marginal seats to make sure that we win those marginal seats. Because if we get 2 Labour MPs for Cornwall, we'll be building on the legacy of the fantastic Candy Atherton, who, on her own, fought the corner for Cornwall for so many years, achieved so much when she was the MP for effectively the MP for Cornwall, wasn't she? And, sadly she's no longer with us, but that legacy of her work has to live on, and if we can get Labour MPs elected, then we can achieve that. If we don't get Labour MPs elected, then we have Tories. I wish all my comrades in Cornwall the best of luck with it.
Thank you very much. Thanks for being here today, and thanks for such wonderful weather. The Tory government does not have a majority in Parliament. Parliament is gridlocked at the moment on debating Brexit, and we are standing by the people of this country, however they voted, whether they voted leave or remain, to bring people together, because there is no future in continuing with austerity, which means the poorest frankly get poorer, those on universal credit lose out, those desperate to get housing across the whole country lose out, and those that need our health services and education lose out. We have a Tory government that has been benign in its tax arrangements for the very richest and brutal in its arrangements in the funding of local government, where their money has been slashed and they have become the conduit for Tory cuts. So it is our job to fight back. We fight back by winning local authorities. We fight back politically by supporting those people that are standing up against the cuts in personal independence payments, disability payments in general, and of course the way in which our children all over the country are being shortchanged with shortages in school budgets. And so we have to say there is an alternative. There is an alternative of electing a government that instead of cutting services for the most needy would invest and expand, but would also invest and expand in the economy in all parts of the country. At the moment, there is a wholly disproportionate use of big government investments in London and the South East, and a disproportionately low level of investment in the poorest parts of the country, namely the South West, East Midlands, North East, North West. And so the Labour way of dealing with that will be a national investment bank to fund big infrastructure projects, but it will also be regional investment banks. That means full investment in an efficient, effective and reliable rail service to all of the far southwest. We can no longer go on with closures for weeks at a time because of bad weather or under maintenance of the line. That can only be done by big scale investment. That will be done by a Labour government to guarantee that rail service. The Labour parties all over the southwest campaigned for it, and John McDonnell included that pledge in his speech to the last Labour Party conference. That is the Labour Party's democracy in action, delivering policies for the future.
Okay, I want you to imagine a crowd gathered about a dangerous hero, Jeremy Corbyn, man of the hour. Everyone wants to talk to him, of course. Everyone wants a piece of him. Everyone's pressed around him, noisy, excitable, basically making a racket. And suddenly, a gap opens up between me and the leader of the opposition. And I dash in there, breathless, with nothing but an iPad in my hand, and ask him for a few words for Red Cornwall. Apologies for the poor sound quality. There wasn't much I could do about it. You'll all be thrilled to learn that I have invested in some better recording equipment.
What's going to happen is we're hoping to paint the duchy red.
Do so.
That's what we. And we wondered if you had a message, because this is for a podcast called Red Cornwall, and we're hoping you have a message for Labour in Cornwall.
Red Cornwall. Okay, now. The Labour Party's grown a great deal in Cornwall in the past 3 or 4 years, and that's fantastic. Cornwall is sadly the low-pay capital of Britain. The levels of wages are poor, job security is poor, and the housing housing situation is exacerbated by issues surrounding second homes and the dislocation of small villages as a result. I'm very impressed with all the Labour parties across Cornwall that have done so much to put together the Cornwall Manifesto, put together a manifesto which will involve infrastructure investment to improve transport links across the whole county, particularly improvements in rail and bus services, integration of our transport networks, but also it's about housing and housing development for social housing in rural areas, and that in turn will bring about greater stability in the community. When a village becomes one that's dominated completely by second homes, then the shops go, the schools go, the sense of community is damaged as a result of it. We need a balance in our communities, and I'm very impressed with the way in which Cornish Labour is doing so much to regenerate the county and, of course, our county.
Well, thank you. And actually, we were really inspired by your message, which was read out at the start of the first ever Cornwall conference, where everyone gave a big cheer. There were loads of us in the hall, and we were thrilled.
And I'll be in Cornwall very soon this summer, because we're doing some more campaigning visits there. So we'll be there again soon, and we can have a good catch up. And the meetings we've had in Red have been amazing. Really loved it.
That's wonderful. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.
And you might well be forgiven for thinking that was an end to it, except that the youth officer for North Cornwall CLP, all of 15 years old, Indigo, was also with me, as she is my daughter.
I'm Indigo Haynes, and I want your job.
No problem. What's the main places you cover in North Cornwall? Newquay?
No, we're way higher up than that. From Bodmin to Bude, it's...
Okay.
So.
Have you got Tintagel?
Yeah.
So couldn't you put Tintagel as a symbol of the party? We could do.
Oh, yeah.
I've got a picture of my two of my sons in Tintagel, one really bright day. We get the most amazing colours. I love it.
Yeah, it's a beautiful place. The Cornish coast is just the best.
Fantastic.
Thank you. We've taken up your time.
Yes. Well done you. Tintagel, okay?
Yeah.
Friends, comrades, thank you for listening to the first ever episode of Red Cornwall, a socialist podcast brought to you from the very north of the duchy, not far from the beautiful sands of Widmouth Bay near Bude. We are hoping this will be a regular podcast, hopefully monthly, so please subscribe, listen, and tell your friends. Next time on Red Cornwall, we have Fred Ridgins from Bude, a treasure house of socialist knowledge. And if you know your Engels from your Gramskys, or really wish to, better not miss episode 2, where he and Steve Haynes will be discussing the history and the theory of socialism. Signing off with the raised fist of solidarity, this is Red Cornwall.